Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to 1% Better, where we take a look at hidden stories in sport. I'm Xylon, and I'm joined by Dr. David Lipman. Your medical question today is, true or false? Singing loudly while cycling uphill can help improve your VO2 max.
That's garbage. That was an article that was released like in Jest a couple of years ago. I swore that was like it was about the Norwegians, wasn't it?
It is related to them, but ChatGPT says it's true-ish. It's essentially resisted breathing training, although your cycling training partners might not appreciate it.
No, that's garbage. That is hot garbage. You're talking.
Anyway.
So resisted breathing is like you're talking about training the inspiratory and expiratory muscles, right? Respiratory muscle training. You generally don't do that while you're exercising because it's gonna like impact the actual ability for you to produce wattage. You can do it on an easy session perhaps, but yeah, you need more resistance than just singing, because it's like saying walking helps your endurance. It's like, yeah, okay, if you walk for long enough. You need
What about
probably
singing
something.
opera? Like, does it depend what you sing? Singing opera where you're really going for it.
Well, I mean,
This is
that's
a ridiculous
about
discussion.
you're talking about breath control, right? And the ability to do that sort of stuff. So maybe, but like, yeah, there are better ways to go about it. There are any number of breathing devices that are going to provide external load and therefore, be more effective for you. Particularly if you're a serious endurance athlete, like think about how quickly you're moving air when you're gasping, doing sort of VO2 max work. Like, I don't think a bit of singing is going to move the needle.
Anyway, I hope you appreciated my medical question this week because you did not appreciate last week's one, but I think it was Stephen Lacey who came out
Yeah,
in defense of me.
Lace. Well, he just said, "Yeah, I got the question." I said, "Well, you're fluent in Xylon," and he said, "Yeah, well, neither of us are that smart, so we must speak the same language." So
Shout out to Tom Wallace. We are supported by Precision Fuel and Hydration, and he used our discount code. He said, "Thanks, 1% better. Just ordered my race nutrition for my two upcoming marathons, Sydney and Dunedin, and scored over $30 off with the 1% better discount. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. And loving the banter of the latest episode. Can't imagine what it's like for you both rattling around that huge chateau. Do you ever see each other in there?" I don't know. I stayed with David for about a week. I think I saw him about 2 days. He sent me
don't even.
his live location and I managed to track him down.
Absolute garbage. That is an absolute G up. You're all as bad as each other. Uh, on that note, mate. Speaking of, you don't know this, but this morning I was worried I was going to have to record this from the toilet slash bathroom because I got locked in. The lock failed
What?
on the door, and I was stuck there. We pulled the locks
Sorry,
off, like we
sorry,
pulled.
sir. I do want to hear the story, but before we move on, I want to just mention the discount code from Precision Fuel and Hydration, OPB2025. We also have a link in the show notes down below. So check that out on your first 15% off on your first purchase. What now? You were stuck where?
I was locked in the bathroom, and we ended up pulling the handles off the door, trying to like jimmy the lock. Then I was going to jump out the window. That wasn't working. Then we were going to we tied this rope, and I was going to use that to help like climb across to the balcony. Man, it was anyway. I was in there for about 90 minutes. Finally, I ended up like getting the lock open from the inside. So it
Why
was it
was
was
it
an
locked?
interesting.
Did you lock yourself in there because you have your father-in-law staying with you?
We just lock the door when you go to the toilet so no one comes in. Like, it's not unreasonable to do. Because particularly for that one, because that door slams all the time, so we keep it closed at baseline. So it's not like, oh, if the door's closed, knock. It's like the door's always closed. Just like, is there someone in there or not? So yeah, mate, it was anyway. Glad to have people around. I was very calm about it all, but it was bizarre, and I was in there for like 90 minutes. So that torched my morning this morning.
That
But it
is
was quite.
scary. We once had friends staying with us, and their little toddler locked herself in one of our bedrooms. We foolishly had keys in there, not thinking that kids were going to come stay, and removing them. And she locked herself in there, and we started panicking. We had to calmly say to her, "Pass us the key through the window, give it here," and she like took her time doing that. Eventually, she did, but I can tell that with those
Didn't
parents and with us, the panic stations kicked in.
didn't you just bribe her with something sweet? Isn't that what you do?
I think it would have ended that way if she didn't give up so soon. But what's going on with you? I heard you had a treadmill run today, and you are not feeling so happy about life.
Oh, I wouldn't say I'm not feeling happy. I'm just not feeling fit. Like I'm happy enough, man. I just like I don't feel like I used to feel on the treadmill. Let's put it that way. But no, I ran well. I did an 18K over the weekend. I did almost we're back as a podcast, mate. You did 20Ks on the bike. I did 18Ks on the trails. Like we're back, baby.
I
It's
don't know.
happening.
I'm not sure about that. Listeners have been commenting about how positive I've been, but I've had a setback, and it's just reminded me that this journey back to recovery is not linear. I did that 20K on the bike. The back did not like it. I was in pain for the rest of the day. A couple of days later, then I hopped on the treadmill on the indoor trainer for 35 minutes and had the exact same response. But my biokinetic spoke me off a ledge this morning and said, listen, you've just come back from a hectic 3-week European trip. Your body's still out of whack. We've only had one strength session so far. So give it time, like give yourself time to recover. And similar to what you said, we're only staying on the indoor trainer for the next 3 weeks. We're not going outside riding, and give the body time to recover and come back.
All I'm taking from that is your back wasn't hurting when you were with me, mate. So like, just saying, just saying.
I know, I know.
But no, all good, mate. Did an 18K trail run, brutal uphill at the end of that. I sent you a screenshot of that. That was rough going. It was really hot and rough. And then today did some intervals on the treadmill, doing some mile reps. And I've never loved mile reps, but I particularly didn't love them this morning and did not do many of them. I was thinking I'd do like, oh, well, maybe do like 3, 4. If it's a really good day, I'll do 5 like I used to, like 2, did a half one, and I was like, I'm done. I'm cooked. Heart rate hit 190. My core temp got up to like super high. I was pouring sweat. It was brutal. So it was warm. I was over caffeinated and mild altitude, but I wasn't impressive nonetheless.
I know you struggled to finish that, and the last bit was really hard. So well done for finishing. I feel like we fraud sometimes because when we started this podcast, we were entering events and doing crazy events and ultras and doing this and that and sub 3 hour marathons. And since then, we've just been like trudging along and sort of just exercising for life. But our listeners are, carrying the flag for us. And we're going to talk about that a little. We got loads of community shout outs to get through today. We're going to shout everyone out who's carrying the flag for us and entering events and doing some crazy, impressive stuff. Speaking of which, we are supported by Stride. I wanted to ask you, we had Colin Quigley on here from Team Meridia a while ago, and they had something called the Meridia Mile where they were inviting people to run virtually. Now, one listener who's going to get loads of shout outs today, Spencer Louderbeck, is currently leading that. So you're welcome, Colin, for us sending our amazing people over there. But is this something you're thinking of doing? And if you were to do it, would Stride help you predict how you would do in the mile?
Yeah, so actually Spencer asked me about this because he was a bit shocked he was leading it. I think he thought I might be leading if I entered. Um, so I discussed with Colleen that I said I would go do this, at least on the podcast I did. You don't remember because you don't listen on podcasts, but I certainly did. I need to go find a track to do it. Obviously, I'm not going to do that up here, but this is my last week at altitude, so I can go pop this off next week or something. But I'll be honest, mate. Like I said to Spencer, like I'd be lucky to get 5:45 was my guess, and then I had a look at Stride. It gives you some race predictions based on your power duration curve. And now, one thing to know is when you've got a power duration curve, it can only spit out what you give it, right? And so I've been feeding it data from trails and from altitude. So it's going to underestimate me a little bit, my ability, right? If I went down to to sea level and wasn't on trails, it'd probably be a little bit quicker. But the mile predictor here says 6:12 plus or minus 7 seconds. So it's there or thereabout. My estimation was 5:45 or so.
So Spencer is currently leading with 5:23. So there you heard, Spencer, a list of bullet points of excuses as to why he'd be slower than you.
I just said to him, man, I'm not going to be fast. I was like, I'd be lucky to get 5:45, and he didn't believe me. And I was like, mate, I'm running less than half of what I used to, all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, I don't think they're excuses. Like I don't think I could do it. I'm just not fast enough. So at the moment, but I did like on the treadmill, my miles today, I did it's treadmill speed. So like take it with a grain of salt, but I went about 5:41 equivalent, which was 17 k's an hour. I did a mile in roughly that. So yeah, there or thereabouts 5:45, I reckon is probably reasonable
Are you going to
for
do
me.
it?
And I don't know. I'll see. I need to find a track for this. Like I could do it on a flat road, but like it's It's not for me. Like I know Mike
Yeah,
O'Leary
no,
did
you
his in
need a
that
track.
way. Well, you don't. You can certainly do it, but like I don't really have a flat mile near me. I've got like a mile uphill in Richmond Park. I could do it on. Yeah, I don't know. Like, look, again, what can I do? 540 with super shoes on, maybe 530 something high, but like yeah, I'm not getting 520s. But I would like, if I wanted to do it, I'd do it on track. And like this, I mean, Battersea Park isn't too far, but it's a long way to go to run a mile. Let's put it that way.
Thanks to Stride Running Power Meters for supporting us. We've got a link in the show notes down below if you want to check it out. That link is unique to our podcast. Listen, I can't even believe it's taken this long to bring it up. I've got a bone to pick with you. When I was staying with you, you outed me. You were disgusted. We spoke about it last week about me heating up my yogurt in the microwave to bring it to room temperature. You very sneakily, when I asked you not to, took a video of me doing it and put it
You
on
didn't.
social, and
You
it
didn't
just
ask me
went
to.
off.
You did not ask me not to. To be very clear, you didn't say anything about it, and I just grabbed a video.
When you tried to
There
do
was
it the
nothing.
first time, I was like, no, 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 no. I can't, I don't want, I know this is weird and people are going to freak out. I don't want any evidence of it. Anyway, seeing as we had such a big response to this, I have written an apology, which I would
Have
like to
you?
read out to our listeners now. I
When
have.
you say you wrote it, please explain how you
Just
went about it.
let me just read it. Let me just read it. Picture a public figure, a politician who's messed up reading this. To my dear listeners, friends, and the lactose tolerant community at large, I am writing today to address a grave matter that has shaken the very foundations of trust between us. The footage released by my co host of me heating yogurt in a microwave. I recognize that my actions were not just a lapse in judgment, but a fundamental breach of the unspoken social contract we all share as yogurt consumers. For centuries, yogurt has, I'm not going to get through this with a straight face. For centuries, yogurt has been enjoyed cold, fresh, and in a manner that preserves its dignity. My choice to subject it to microwave radiation was a betrayal to dairy everywhere. I take full responsibility. No one else pressed that 30 seconds button. No one else heard the gentle hum of the microwave and thought, yes, that is fine. That was on me and me alone. I understand that for many, this is unforgivable. I should tell you, I've reflected deeply, that I've learned from this, and that it will never happen again. But the truth is, I haven't. It won't. And it will happen again because room temperature yogurt is my truth, my lived experience, my hill to thermally die on. To those I've hurt, I offer this. Perhaps it's not me who must change. Perhaps it's you who must expand your dairy horizons.
No, incorrect. I
But
didn't want to
listeners
talk
went
about.
wild with this. I loved the responses, man.
I've got some here. So I got both Kieran Thomas, aka the Shoe Wizard, and Spencer mentioned before that it was unhinged. Christina Scroce, friend of ours, said DQ and red card. Nick Tam, a countryman of yours, future guest, distanced the country of South Africa from you. Said it's
I
not a South
love
African
that.
thing.
Oh, I love that.
Another friend of mine, Kate, I don't think she listens to the podcast, but she saw the video and just said straight to jail. Claire Thomas also, I can't even repeat what she said, but she called you a sick swear word. And then she was also just as disappointed with you warming your yogurt up to room temperature by like leaving it out on the counter. So yeah, people are not happy, mate. I do have a question for you though.
Yeah.
I got a DM. Do you or do you not microwave your lettuce?
uh, I think, was that DM from my wife?
No comment.
So I can't even lie. I think we should move on.
You gotcha.
I you've
Microwaving your lettuce.
listen.
There's something
You've
wrong, mate.
You've painted me in a corner with listeners. Listen, I have Lustam Korzi who stood in my corner, who messaged me and said, "So I don't let them change you. You heat up your yogurt." He said, "I do the same, and I even heat up my lettuce as well. I can't eat frozen lettuce." It's not, I want to pay. I don't want listeners to stop to unsubscribe to this podcast. It's not that I make it warm. I'm not heating it. I'm not making it hot. That would be disgusting. Is that I'm taking the chill of the fridge off it, like because I can't. My teeth cannot handle it. But Lusta, thank you so much for being with me. And yes, yeah, let's leave it there.
Okay.
You
Well, let's
can't
get back
even
to
you
things.
can't even sit up straight, man. Oh, you're laughing so much.
Let's get back to things that are on the right side of history. And thankfully, most of our listeners are there. The poll that we put out last week on Spotify is still live, so you can go vote there. But most people, well, so far, everybody has said that it's cereal first, then milk. Although we did have Micah Gay comment on Spotify saying cereal first, then milk, but yogurt first, then cereal. I disagree, but whatever. Fair enough. Fair enough. We mentioned the Meridian Mile already, and we mentioned Spencer Ladderback at 5:23. He's currently leading that and paced it really, really well. His splits on Strava were really, really consistent. Congratulations to his wife as well. Was it Heather? I think we saw. So
Yeah,
she
Heather was on
ran.
there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Mike O'Leary, our another listener of ours, went 6:07. So that was great work there. This next one, mate. I think we've talked about this gent before running 100 miles, but I can't be sure. My memory's not that good. But Alistair Courtney got fourth in the North Downs Way 100 miler in 1743. I seem to remember him doing something similar to this recently, but I could be wrong. So
If
Alistair,
you
let
know,
us know.
if you're listening, Alistair, let us know. And if you know Alistair, let him know as well. We'd love to. I can't recall, but I'd love to hear that.
And then
Uh,
the next one, Brian Sip. He titled this. I assume it's Sip. My apologies. CIP is the surname on Strava, but he titled his run, "Hopefully the last marathon I'll ever have to race," which intrigued me. I want to know the story, so please let us know, Brian. But he ran this in the Pacific Northwest, ran 3:09. It looked like a lovely spot to be running. So congratulations there.
And then we had Sharon Ryder, who did City to Surf. Shout out to you, Sharon. And then Steve Lacey and Gary Fay, who was a guest on the podcast a couple of episodes ago. They won a golf tournament over the weekend.
They won a couple of bottles of Jim Beam. Neither of them drink. And I said, she's a rough prize. Like they could have given you something a little bit better than Jim Beam. There's there's levels to the shelving or whatever. Like I'm not much of a drinker, but like a little bit better than Jim Beam would have been nice. And the next thing we wanted to we'll come back to that next one. We'll do the last one first, and then we'll come back. So for those not on Strava, we mentioned Chris Bainbridge a few weeks ago and his precision fuel and hydration order for a ride. He mentions he was going to go London to Edinburgh and back, and he had to cancel out or pull out due to bad weather. So just wanted to update listeners on that. And I think it's a smart decision. I was talking to some people last week talking about risk versus consequence. And the risk of problems may be low, but the consequence may be high. And I think sometimes we forget that. And I think you need to, consider those two in making decisions like this. So I think it was a smart decision. So, a bit of condolences there, Chris, but, live to ride again another day. And hopefully you get to do that ride soon and smash it. But we wanted to make an announcement. His name gets mentioned a lot on the podcast, Spencer Ladderback, and he does a lot of work. And particularly last week, he's done a lot of work on the memes. And they're well received, I assume, on social media. I always laugh at them when he sends them through to us. And we have promoted him in the podcast. We promoted him to Chief Meme Officer, so CMO. So thanks, Spencer. Enjoy your new position. And we have a couple other positions that are brewing in the background, so they will be coming soon.
Yeah, if you haven't checked out our Instagram, do so. 1% Better Pod. That's where Spencer, we share all of the memes he comes up with pretty much for almost every episode, and they are all spot on. They are hilarious. Coming up on this episode, we are going to talk to Kristi Storoschuk. She's worked on a paper with regard to Zone 2 training, and David are going to geek out big time. And you want to stick around for the ending of that podcast. Hilarious. That's all I'm going to say. The ending of that episode. But before we do, let's have a look at what's come across my desk this week. The Carolina Panthers in the NFL have signed JJ Weaver, a linebacker who has 11 fingers. Surely that should be illegal. Surely contractually they should chop one off.
Well, I mean, it's interesting they didn't chop it off at birth because they certainly did. I think my mother had an 11th finger when she was a child, and they chopped it off at birth. So
Oh,
you
really?
certainly, yeah, yeah, it grew out. I think from memory, it grew out like sort of just above the first knuckle of her little finger, sort of this extra one. JJ's got a true extra finger where his whole, it comes from the palm. He's got his own custom gloves, which I think is kind of cool. I mean,
That
unsurprising,
is cool.
well,
Wow.
you can't wear
Yeah.
standard gloves, so like you have to make custom ones. This guy's in the NFL, so like they can get it
You
done.
can't
So
walk into a sports store and say, "Hey, where's the section with the 11
yeah,
finger
yeah,
gloves?"
exactly. So it's his right hand for the record. Yeah, I think it's probably an advantage, but who knows? But interestingly, because there's an ex player who's no longer in the league called Jason Pierre-Paul. Um, he lost a finger, his right index finger, in a firework accident. So since he's not in the league anymore, on average, the NFL has more than 10 fingers. I find that to be a very fun stat.
What?
Yeah, the average NFL, like the average of fingers, the number of fingers in the NFL is more than 10.
But I'm trying to wrap my brain around that. Is that just because of him?
Yeah,
Obviously.
because everyone's got 10 and one guy's got
Yeah,
11.
yeah.
So the average is more than 11, more than 10.
And
This
he's
is the
lucky
sole
a
reason I
wild
put it
card.
in here. This is the sole reason I put this in here because like
Just
the
for
league
that
average is now
punchline.
more than 10. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know this, but the oh, sorry, were you done with NFL? Were you done with
Yes.
your
Yes.
hilarious jokes? I didn't know this, but the CrossFit Games happened over last weekend, and you were telling me that Tia Claire Toomey was very, very impressive. Well, I don't know her. Why is that? Why were you so impressed with her?
Well, she's not lost one. Like since she started winning them, she hasn't lost one. Basically,
Mm.
she has won the most ever CrossFit Games. She's won the most consecutive. She's done all those things. So she won 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Had a year off to have a child, and then came back and won 24 and 25. She won by 182 points. I can't find context to how dominant that is as a single victory, but it sounded like it was quite good. And then Jason Hopper won the men's. I won't say too much here, aside from Tia Clay Toomey is pretty impressive as an athlete. She's competed in Olympic weightlifting for Australia in the Commonwealth Games. I think maybe even the Olympics. I saw something about that. I don't remember that being the case, but could well be the case. So correct us if I'm wrong there. And she's also done some high rocks recently. So just a really impressive athlete from just near where I spent most of my life in Brisbane. She's not far away. And so, yeah, just really impressive.
Should we touch on T100 London Triathlon? I sort of dipped in and out of the coverage over the weekend, but so good to see Lucy Charles Barclay back to winning ways.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised by this. I wouldn't have picked her to win this. Her distance, she's more of an Ironman athlete than a 70.3 athlete, particularly with people like Taylor Knibb in the field, who's almost the other way around.
Yeah.
Ashley Gentle as well. I was really surprised by some of the, like, it must have been a tough day for whatever reason. And I don't know what reason it was because I couldn't find a reason for it to be tough because lots of people seem to be having a bad day, particularly on the women's side. But yeah, Lucy won it. She passed late in the run, from what I remember.
Yeah, it was like
I didn't watch
2.5
much of
Ks to
this.
go. She passed Kate War, who has been unbelievable to the last while.
Well, I found out, at least on the coverage I was watching, that it was WAF, not war, which is strange to me, but we all get to decide how things are pronounced.
Interesting. I'll
Um,
tell you a funny story. It isn't funny, it's embarrassing probably. I was like, oh, her surname's Kate Ward. Let me Google to see if she's related to Steve or Mike or Australian cricketers by any chance. And then Google told me she's British. She's not Australian. And then I was watching the coverage and looked at the flags and I'm like, oh, of course. So
that
WAF.
is
Okay, that's
embarrassing.
interesting.
Yeah, that is embarrassing, especially because it's Mark War, not Mike War. But whatever, mate. We'll let you do that.
That is how
But yes,
un-Australian I am. Proud of it.
okay. Anyway, so that was interesting. Like it, I was listening to Taylor and Nib speaking afterwards. Basically, it sounds like they're neck and neck for the final in Dubai. So they'll make that a good race. So that's exciting there on the women's side. It also
So,
bodes really well.
just quickly I am surprised by that result as well because they were all together on the bike. Taylor Nerb had closed that gap, the swim gap on the bike, and I mean, she bikes phenomenally and she also runs phenomenally. And I expected it to just run off, but Lucy Charles was so smooth in T1, and then Taylor Nerb was sort of she lost about 10 seconds trying to get her shoes on and was rattled and just didn't seem to be in the zone. And And then, yeah, Lucy Charles just ran Kate down with 2.5K to go. I think it was redemption for her because a year ago she said her grandfather was there, watched her. She did not finish the race. It was very disappointing on home turf not to finish like that. And unfortunately, he's no longer with us. So, she dedicated that win to him, and it was very special.
Yeah. I mean, Taylor's a fascinating athlete, obviously has a huge engine and a very impressive engine, but struggles to convert that sometimes. If she's out front and dominating, it's very easy for her because she can take very conservative decisions. But once she's not, it can be a little bit hard for her. And I think that can rattle her. So if I was giving race tactics to her competitors, it would be like, you need to rattle her cage. Like, you need to be with her. You can't let her get away on the bike. You have to be like, swim away from her and then stay, and then don't bike too hard, because when she gets close to you on the bike, you have to be able to match her and just sort of put pressure on her in T2 and on the run, because I think that's the only way. I mean, physiologically, she seems to be very good. So the way to rattle her is that conversion between physiology and pace, I guess. So like the difference between horsepower and speed, to use an analogy. So that's how I'd be thinking about it. Putting pressure on her downhills, descending, those sort of things where her bike skills aren't quite as good as her pure legs are. So
That's tactically astute, I'd say. I'd say that's a brilliant strategy.
well, I mean, you've got to beat her somehow. I mean, listen, if you're physiologically better, like it looked like Lucy was just better than I ran away from her, fine. If you can do that, you can do that, right? But yeah, it's interesting. It bodes well for Lucy coming back to Kona, though. I'd be worried if I was some of the girls racing Lucy in Kona. So yeah, I mean, on the men's side, Hayden Wild won it. We talked about Hayden lining up. It was a great win for him. I mean, the only thing I really wanted to talk about here, this dude wears an Apple Watch. Surely we can get him a watch sponsor. Someone like, it wasn't even an Apple Watch Ultra. It was like a normal stock standard Apple Watch. I'm like, is this for real? Is this really happening?
Maybe he's doing it on purpose, but I mean, he looked so in control the whole day. And I think we spoke about his recovery on last week's episode. And I think someone like him, he's not lining up if he doesn't believe he can win. I think that's what the best do.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to think about that, because that's what they were saying in the broadcast. But at the same time, it's a payday for him. It's the first time at that distance. He's just come off injury. Like, there's reasons you'd start. And the other question is, like, does he need to be at his best to win it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not.
I got a question for you. I was watching the men's bike, and I think his name was Bogan, a German who was leading the bike, and everyone said,
Rico Bogan. Yep.
yeah, this is what he does. He's a biker. He's just going out front, and the expectation is he won't finish high up on the run. Now, for someone like him, is it worth biking much, much, much easier and then trying to save something from the run? Would his run be faster if he biked much, much easier? Or would that just not translate? That's just not how it works.
It depends on, like, it really depends on how. So the harder you bike, the less hard you can run. But there is a crossover point there, which is what you're talking about. Like, where's that crossover point? You would assume he understands where that crossover point is, and he's biking to that crossover point, because
Okay.
if we're just talking physiology, yeah, sure, the bike affects the run, but if he's that much of a better biker, then he needs to work on his run in general. But if he, let's say his fresh half marathon is, and I have no idea this guy, let's call him 110, maybe, let's call him 115. If his fresh half marathon's 115 and he gets off and runs a 117 off the bike, you're probably pretty happy. But if you're if your fresh half marathon's only like 115 and other guys are running 110, like, what chance do you have? You don't really have much of a chance. They're going to be 5 minutes. You're going to be more than 5 minutes up the road from them to really put pressure on them. So triathlon is 3 disciplines plus transitions plus nutrition, right? And so you have to get all that right and be the fastest to do all of that. And each discipline impacts the next one from a physiology and a fatigue standpoint. But yeah, you want to find that sweet spot for everybody, the Uber bikers or the Uber runners, where the bike doesn't trash your run too much, but it also doesn't put you too far behind. The opposite would be someone like Jason West, who his bike is fine, but his run's really good. And it's like, well, should he bike a bit harder? It's like, well, then does that ruin your run?
I'm looking at the results here, and Rico Bogan ended up 5th. He ran 106. That was 5 minutes, just under 5 minutes behind Hayden Wild, the winner.
Yeah. So, in his mind, and what was the bike? I think Hayden Wild biked 4th. So, like, Rico Bogan probably biked 1st, and I think Hayden Wild biked 4th from memory.
Yeah, Rico biked first, 147.
Yeah. And what did Hayden do?
Hayden biked second, 148. So minutes
Yeah.
apart.
So he went off
So
the
there's
front.
no, you can't really go much slower on the bike then. Okay.
No,
Okay.
I mean, unless he's an
Makes
uber
sense.
swimmer as well. I mean, if he's a swim biker, then you try and get away from both, and then there's no drafting either. That's the other reason you might go on the bike and push a bit harder, is it to avoid any drafting benefit? Because even at 12
Okay.
meters, there's some mild drafting benefit.
Okay. Let's move on then. Ines Fitzgerald is someone we've talked about a bit on this podcast as she's going from strength to strength. You've been following her career closely. Tell us why.
Yeah, I mean, this last week or so, she got a gold in the European under 23,000, running 8:46, a gold in the European under 25,000, running 15:09, and then a bronze in the 5,000, the Open British Champs, running 15:48. So that's big. That's really, really big. I mean, her PBs are much quicker than that. So her PBs are from this year. She ran 14:39 for the 5,000 and 8:32 for the 3,000. So it says she was probably significantly better in the under 20s, given how good she is on her open level. And in the opens, I heard her interviewed. You know, she got bronze there. She said it was a bit tactical, and she's not quite there yet with the tactic stuff. So it's good for her to race both. I think this is a good lesson for development. You need to be a big fish in a small pond and a small fish in a big pond to develop properly. You need to learn to be dominant on the start line and to be somebody who's looking at the dominant people and having to cover those moves. It's really, really good for your tactical development. So I think it bodes well for her. She's qualified for the Tokyo World Champs, so we'll get to watch her there in the 5,000, which is great. So she qualified via the time, right? This 14:39 qualifies her, so it'll be exciting to see her there.
And then we've been talking about Hayden Wild a lot, and Alex, he's not to be outdone by the traditional rivals in the Olympic distance in triathlon. But Alex, he's been running a lot, and he set a new 5,000 meter PB.
They're in 13:13.89. That 0.89 is really important. We'll come back to that in a second. It puts him 102nd for this year in 5,000 meter times. So he's outside the top 100 for context,
Crazy.
right? It's wild.
Crazy. Yeah.
The standard for the world,
I like
and
that.
to
It's
be
wild. Hayden Wild will like that.
exactly, the if you'd run 13:12, it would have put him in like 80th or something. There's a lot of people who've run 13:13. So anyway, I digress. The standard for the world champs is 13:01, so he's quite a bit off that. The only person who's qualified is George Mills from Britain, or the only British person who's qualified is George Mills, and there are 42 entries for the world champs, which means that you can only get in with the qualifying time, or sorry, for all events, you get in via the qualifying time or via points. If you run the qualifier, you trump people who've got points. So basically, there are 42 slots. There are some people, they may or may not end up with people who qualify based on points and ranking points. Suffice to say, Alex, he's not even a consideration here, and he wouldn't have been thinking about that. But just for context here, to sort of put that in the picture of world championships.
Why does the 0.89 matter?
The 0.89 matters because it took, if he'd run 13 flat, like 13:13 flat, he would have been like 80th or 90th for the year. There's just a clump of guys who'd run 13:13, and then the 0.89 made a huge difference. Because I was looking for him on the rankings list, and I'm like, nope. These people are all in 13. Like, he must have run something. And I got down there, I was like, oh, okay, wow. So
Oh. And then the US track and field champs happened recently as well. We're going to get to Cooper Lutkenhaus, who got onto Twitter or X or whatever you call it, like a week or so ago. And that was the first name that just popped up all over my timeline. We'll get to him in a second. But what happened?
well, I think first and foremost, like, the discussion around the US champs is that it's a US champs and it's cutthroat. It's like top three go if you got the qualifiers, and otherwise you don't go. You know, the British have, I think, top two go, and then there's a discretionary place. A lot of people don't have trials. A lot of countries don't really have trials. I mean, Kenya does, Ethiopia does, but like many countries don't have trials. They sort of have an informal system or a less formal system. I think this creates races, both races and racers, and I think both of those things are important. I think it's great. It's a spectacle. It's exciting, and it's a talking point. Right? And you know, that's kind of what track needs. Track and field, both of them. To you know, at the very least, this is exciting. So
We've talked a while ago about what gets people attention, and it is storylines in terms of success and failure and what the outcome's going to be. And I think with these races, it's so defined, it's so clear. Up position 1, 2, 3, you are qualifying, so we're looking to see who is finishing in those positions. I think that's what makes it exciting.
yeah, the chocolate medal's a real talking point. always, right? Fourth, the chocolate medal. So Yared Nuguse, for instance, Olympic silver, got American chocolate. What does that mean? That means that he's not going to the world champs as we stand at the moment, and his next hope,
Wow.
yeah, him and Josh Hoey, right, is the other big one for the men's 800. Those two can still qualify as the fourth American. What they would need to do is win the Diamond League final, which means that they
Wow.
have to stay. Which means they have to stay up, perform in the Diamond League, win that to then even get the opportunity to race like a couple weeks later in the World Championships. So it changes their season significantly. It's fascinating. So you really need a dual peak season where you peak for US. This is classic. You peak for your national championships and you peak for a competition like the major competition, the World Championships or the Olympics. Now we talked a little bit about earlier in the year. We talked about Lionel Sanders and was he in shape too early? And it seems like maybe he was because he's now sort of out. But maybe Yared Nuguse doing Grand Slam track put him back a little bit. Right now, Josh Kerr did Grand Slam track as well. He ran really well at the British Champs. He won the 5,000 meters there. And he was an auto qualifier. He did what Sidney McLaughlin is, which is like he's an auto qualifier for the event that he won last World Championships. So he doesn't need to run that. So he didn't. And, Sydney did something similar. She ran the 400 rather than running the four hurdles. So yeah, it's just an interesting situation to consider for those guys who did and girls who got fourth. And, is there still another way? And is it worth it?
Yeah, no, I find it hard. I tend to lean towards a discretionary position because I find it so hard with trials where you have this one day where you have to show up and you have to be on your best and everything has to go right. Which kudos to the athletes who make it, but sometimes you have a great athlete where just circumstances did not lead them to perform that day, and I feel like management coaches they should always have a discretionary place at their disposal. But I don't know, it's tough
It's
decision to have.
it's hard if you come third and you don't get that spot though.
That's why I say it's a tough decision to have
Yeah.
because you performed on the day and you want your due, and then maybe like a legacy athlete will take that position because they've performed in the past and maybe can again. I don't know. But what happened in the like that with the under 18 world record?
Yeah, so Cooper Lukenhaus, as you mentioned, ran the under 18 world record in the 800 meters. So he ran 147.27. Sorry, 142.27. That is the fourth fastest American of all time.
He's
This
16 years old,
kid's,
isn't he?
yes, it's wild.
Oh,
That is absolutely wild. I mean, he was beaten by Donovan Brazier, who ran 142.16, and Bryce Hoppel got third in 142.49. Josh Hoey led the whole way. We'll talk about this, him and Nuguse, and their racing style or deciding to lead the whole way and what this means. But I mean, this is interesting. This is exciting. I think there's been some hyperbole around this. People have been making this a big deal. Like, it is very fast. Don't get me wrong. It really is. And it's great for this kid. He ran it with 200 meters to go. He's nowhere and he came through the field really strong. I'm excited by that. At the same time, this kid, like, just needs to be let to be a kid. We said the same thing about Gout. Like, you don't know what happens with these kids, right? This is much better than Gout's running, I think, or comparatively better, or maybe not. It's hard to know, but it's there or thereabouts. And I just think we need to let these kids be kids. Like, why do we? Yeah, they're not adults yet. They've got so many things coming. They've got high school graduations and college and like all sorts of stuff. So like, let's temper the hype a little bit. I'd say mostly for them, right? Mostly for them. There's a chance this is the fastest he ever runs, and that would not be a failure of a career. Just to
yeah.
be clear, like that is still a fast time, and he can still go win world medals and never run faster than this. So like, it's worthwhile considering that. The other thing, it's really hard to discuss this. I'm just going to read this Instagram story I saw from somebody else. Uh, at Pronate with Nate, somebody I follow is an interesting track and field coach. I'm just going to read this, talking about Cooper Lutkenhouse. He just said, if he was a 16-year-old from a country that isn't America or a European, everybody would be saying he's doping. Instead, it's the greatest thing we've ever seen without question. I hope they're all eating their Wheaties with bicarb. So,
I saw this from more than one person, I must say.
yeah, I didn't see this from anybody but him. I don't think this kid's doping, but I also err on the side of nobody's doping till they're guilty. And I know
Mm.
that's a sort of unpopular and seen as a naive opinion. I just don't think you can accuse people because it sort of slanders them. One thing I'd say is like, just we need to be rational with this stuff. Like, I think it's a well-made point. If this kid was Russian, or if it was Chinese, or if he was, Kenyan or Ethiopian, there'd be some questions here, whether it was about his age or whether it was about something else. So, like, let's just all be rational and remember that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Also, the other side of the coin is this kid, for accusations to be led to him, and there's no evidence against the contrary. Like,
Yeah.
it's harsh on a 16-year-old to hear that, if they're
It's
clean and they're above
it's
board.
harsh on a 20-year-old as well. Like,
Yeah,
this is the
yeah.
part of the problem with him being 16, right? It's one of the challenges. But my concern here is not that this kid is doing something untoward. My concern is our rationality when somebody else does this.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
it's a person who's not from
I,
America or Europe. So
I'd actually love to hear from Americans. Like, is that unfair? Is that an unfair statement? Like, we've got a lot of American listeners. They're fans of track and field. Is that an unfair statement? Like, get in touch with us. I'd absolutely love to hear from
yeah.
Americans.
Well, on that note, Shelby Houlihan won the 5,000 meters. She's come back from a drug ban. She had every right to race. She ran well and won the 5,000 meters. But when she was banned, people like, I can't remember her name now. I'm picturing her in my head. She's a great distance runner. Shalane Flanagan came out and said she can't be doping. And I mean, she was ultimately found guilty. Whether or not she was doping, she was found guilty. Like, we can only go off that. And, how many people come out and say that about people who are not American? Like, it's just, my thing here is, I'm convinced that our views of these people are when we know their stories. And so much of knowing the story requires them speaking English, because otherwise we can't know their
Absolutely.
story.
You
And
could,
so,
1000%. You could not have said it better. Absolutely.
but let's move on. I don't want to be negative about this. This was an exciting meet. Cole Hocker snuck. So, okay, this is the hill I'm going to die on. Cole Hocker won the 5,000 meters. He snuck up the inside again. This is what this guy does. He sneaks up the inside. It's not. This is a pattern we're seeing all the time, not just from Cole. Numerous people are doing this at a Diamond League level, at World Championships, at Olympic Games. People are sneaking up the inside. I was always told, do not give away the inside. It is wild to me that, in the hope to push a couple people a bit wider, we're opening the inside for somebody else to come through.
Is he the one with a ponytail?
He is, yeah. He won the 1,500 meters in the Olympics, got third in this championships, and he won the 5,000 this time. And
Well, if you can get through life with a ponytail like that, I mean, he's certainly skilled, obviously. No one's going to stop him.
Well, you get to say that, I don't, mate. So
I'm just jealous. I don't have any hair.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to mention was, I already mentioned Sydney McLaughlin. She won the 400 flat, which was good. She didn't break the American record, which some people thought she would. She was close. She was within 2/10ths of a second. But it's interesting to see what she does at the World Championships now. Whether she runs both, whether she runs just the 400 hurdles, I'm interested to see there. So let's check that out.
Okay, let's move on. Last week, we promised we would do a quick review of the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. That is the women's Tour de France. Were you surprised by anything? Were you impressed by anyone?
I didn't know much about Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, and she raced really well. Like, I don't even know how to get it. Like, I still think
you wouldn't have known much about her because you started watching women's cycling recently, road cycling, and in that time she had switched to focus on the mountain bike discipline. Whereas before she was, at one point she held the road title, mountain bike title, and I think it's cyclocross title all at the same time. And I think she was the first person to ever do that a few years ago.
Yeah, I thought it was gravel, mountain bike, and time trial she held simultaneously.
She's done this a few times. So the one I referred to was like way back, I think in 2014 or something. I was in Ponferrada in Spain when she won, and everyone was like, what? And she's just gone to do it like multiple times.
Okay, so she's one of the goats of cycling by the sounds of things, like just across disciplines.
Actually, she was coached for a while by Barry Austin, who we had on this podcast as a guest, and he spoke at length about her and her training regime. So go and scroll down and have a look at that interview with Barry.
Yeah, okay. And then she got 12 world championships across the different distances. It's wild. I mean, for me, that it's a strange tour because it's so short. It's like it's what, 9 stages. You've got this kind of a couple of sprint stages, which then means you've only got a couple of mountain stages, then a couple of like flats. It's just a weird. You kind of only have to do well a couple of days, and you kind of only have to. It's hard to see. Like, from early on in the men's tour, you can kind of see who the main players are. Like, it just didn't feel like Pauline was a factor, and then all of a sudden she won. So it's a little bit harder on a shorter, like there's a shorter narrative arc, I guess, for someone like me who's less familiar with the characters.
I think it was because the way the race was designed this year, where all the mountain stages were in the second half. So the last 3 days were all mountain stages. So that was always going to be when the overall winners emerged. Before that, you sort of had like Kim LaCorde from Mauritius leading for a couple of days. She's certainly someone who can climb medium mountains, small hills. So, and then you had, a couple of sprinter days as well, like you said. But for me, the big talking point that has come out of this race, and you might have noticed it on the socials and on news websites, was people were commenting on the weight that Pauline Ferrand-Prévot had lost for this race to win this race. Now, I actually had a professional cyclist say to me 2 weeks before the race, I think she's going to win. Did you see how much weight she had lost? And it hadn't occurred to me. And then I went and looked at it. Um, she did an interview this week. She faced the press for the first time since winning. And she defended herself. I've got some comments from her here, which I want to find, where she said, my weight loss was controlled and intelligent. It was not a disease. There was a lot of fuss around it, but I don't take it personally, she said. We are professional athletes. I just prepared myself as well as possible for the biggest race in the world. The last days in the tour were very hard, so watts per kilogram were very important. It's just a process. I had to find a balance between losing weight and maintaining my strength, but I've achieved my goal, and now I'm going on with my normal life. So that was her coming out saying, I did not lose an unreasonable amount of weight. I think the number I saw was 4 kgs that she had lost.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. Can I do this? The eye test. If I look at an eye test, let me not.
No,
Let me not do that. I don't think that's fair.
it's funny. Like, there's lots of commentary on body shapes and sizes and too skinny and not too skinny in all endurance sport, right? Or very big, right? Every time Christian Blumenfeld races, everyone talks about how big he is. Um, oh, it's true. Like, the guy,
No, no,
everyone's
I'm
like, he's
laughing because
enormous.
it's true. I've had the same thoughts of him. Yeah.
Yeah, and part of that is misguided because if you look at his upper body, he's actually quite small. He's just got a
And if
chest
you
all the
meet him in
forty.
person, which I have, he's not that big. If you meet him in
No,
person.
he's got very big legs, but that's what happens when you cycle a bunch. Like, you get big legs. Like, that's anyway. But I digress. Commenting on body types is always fraught with danger, and I think we need to think about that in all aspects, right? In some sports, it's in rugby it's a little bit different, but like in endurance sports, we tend to do it a lot. I just don't think it's right. There is it's been interesting for me watching this because it isn't always just about being lighter. That's I've voiced that opinion here before. Having said that, there are some times where like body composition changes are necessary in professional sport. That could be when you're losing weight for a fight, if you're in a weight class event, right? I've done a little bit of this for Olympic weightlifting. It was pretty easy for me. I just didn't eat for the morning, went to the toilet, and then all of a sudden I made weight because I didn't lift well below. If I wanted to be competitive, I probably needed to be 2 weight classes below that and really sweat out some stuff, but I didn't do that. But this is professional sport to some degree. And I saw some comments from people like, I don't sacrifice my health. It's like, elite sport is sacrificing your health to some degree. And you do get to decide where that line sits for you, for sure. But I don't think you can criticize people for having done something you wouldn't do. Right? Even if she ends up going on to develop an eating disorder, I'm not sure it's our place to judge that morally. She gets to decide, like, maybe that's out of her control, right? She may not be able to control that, and we need to help her. And I'm not saying it's a good thing. I want to be very clear here. I hope that doesn't happen for her, and it would be terrible. And I would strongly advise against that. But we don't get to make a value judgment on that because it's the same thing as somebody riding injured. We can't, we don't make a value judgment on that. We don't say, oh, well, you had a fall and you got a bunch of cuts and grazes, you shouldn't be cycling. We don't say that. It's the same thing here. You don't get to make moral judgments on this. If that's what she needs to do to win and she's decided that and that's what her team says and they're supporting her, like, it's really hard for us to say she shouldn't be doing that. And I think just like we shouldn't be commenting on body types, we shouldn't be throwing stones when people have lost some weight and done that. Now, you can if you want to be a role model and speak out about this stuff, or be a role model for people on body composition and healthy racing, like do that in a positive way. Speak positive to yourself. You don't speak negatively to other people, in my take here.
We actually, this is a very, very hot topic, and we're very grateful because one of the riders who completed the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift this year has been through an eating disorder and is on the road to recovery. And she very graciously came on the pod and spoke to us about what that is and how she wants to help her fellow athletes in the peloton. We're going to put that out in the next 1 or 2 episodes time or so. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast to not miss it. That was an unbelievable conversation. But the last thing I will say on that is it's so interesting that this topic has come out of the Women's Tour de France. Now, I have worked in professional cycling for over 10 years, and I have had multiple men professional cyclists I've worked with who've been through eating disorders. This just shows how courageous the women are, how they're willing to open up and have difficult conversations. Whereas I find on the men's side, it's sort of murmurs and talked about under the covers, where the women are a lot more brave and open and willing to talk about very, very difficult conversations to have.
But again, like, it's nobody else's conversation to have but their own.
Yeah.
Like, we don't get to have conversations about other people. Like, it's not for us to talk about it until they become public about it and want to go public about it. So, we had that rider join us. We're very appreciative of her joining us and talking about it, being willing to talk about it. But again, we wouldn't be having that conversation if she hadn't instigated that conversation.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense.
I think it is her place to tell her story. And she actually messaged me afterwards saying, thank you once again, because I've known you so long. I knew that this was a safe space, that you're going to handle my story very well. And she was willing to open up about it.
Yeah. So the riders and the people talking about Pauline's thing, like, if she comes out of this on the other end and does really well and is happy and healthy, like, there's no stones to throw. And if she ends up with a problem, then okay, then you get to maybe be justified. But she still won. She still won this. And many people make decisions in sport that set them up for life, like winning a Tour de France, and sacrifice some part of their health. Now, that's not to say that that's good, bad, or indifferent. It's not a judgment call. It's just like, that's the reality of it. And this is another version of that.
Yeah. Well, there we go. That is our Tour de France from avec Zwift review, which took another turn. But again, I love these important conversations. Listen, we've been going on and on. Yeah, should we stop leaving Kristi hanging and get to her?
Yeah, let's do that.
Kristi Storoschuk is a PhD candidate in muscle physiology at Queen's University with the goal of contributing to our understanding of diet, food timing, exercise, and metabolism. She is wildly passionate and curious about all things diet, lifestyle, metabolic flexibility, aging, and longevity. Now, you may recognize Kristi from her work in science communication with the Zero Longevity app and on Dom Diagostino's personal blog, ketonutrition.org. Kristi is a level 1 CrossFit coach, passionate CrossFitter herself, and an ex-NCAA Division 1 volleyball player. She also has an epic garden and personal gym. Kristi loves a fitness challenge, including learning to handstand walk on a treadmill. But much to her dismay, she recently became a runner and has combined this new love with her fitness challenge, love running an impromptu marathon and ultra marathon. Kristi, welcome to, you know what, we had you on a previous brand podcast that David and I hosted, and I almost said the name of that podcast. That's how much it's stuck in my brain. Welcome to 1% Better.
Wow, that was quite the intro. That made me, I was like impressed by you saying that, but I'm not impressed by myself. So I don't know if those things line up, but thank you for that very generous intro. It's really a pleasure to be here and be back, I guess. So
yeah,
well, it's good to chat with you guys.
You do listen to a few episodes. I know that. You've texted me about them. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for being part of the community. And you knew a lot of that was coming. And we didn't want to sell you short. You've done some great work and we appreciate you. But you're joining us today because you've been making some waves on social media with a paper called Much Ado About Zone 2, a narrative review assessing the efficacy of Zone 2 training for improving mitochondrial capacity and cardiorespiratory fitness in the general population. I just want to underscore a couple of words there for people, because I think this is where pretty much all of the social media issues have come.
efficacy of zone 2 training, mitochondrial capacity, and cardiorespiratory fitness in the general population. This is not about elite athletes. This is not about training elite athletes. This is about health and fitness. Is that fair to say, Kristi?
100%. Yeah, I think that's where all the controversy online is stemming from, is that we're addressing the messaging to the general public about zone 2 training, and yet unfortunately it's just the people that care about it are the people in the endurance performance world. So they're picking it up feeling like, oh, it's applying to them, when really we're addressing the general population. And so I think that's what's causing a bit of ruckus.
I also think it's important to underscore here that what you have done is done a review of the literature, which is to say, in the literature at the moment, there is no evidence to support this. That is not to say it doesn't work, and that is not to say there will never be evidence to that effect, or that it doesn't work in elite athletes. It's to say, we looked at everything we could find, and at this point, there's no support for this.
Right. And that's important too, because one of the major takeaways from our paper was that there weren't really many zone 2 training studies that we could look to even see if there was evidence, which is just kind of crazy based on the confidence in claims that you'll find online. Which I think that was just a major, psychological takeaway, not even the concept of zone 2 training itself. It was just wow, it's crazy how far a message can be spread without anyone asking where's the evidence for this. And I was asking for evidence online. I was tweeting, I was responding to people's tweets. I was saying hey, do you have a paper to support this claim? Where are you getting this from? And I was just getting crickets. No one could provide any evidence for me, or they would just send me to a podcast where there was an expert, quote unquote, talking about zone 2 training, and that was their line of evidence. So I think this message just got repeated so many times that we just accepted it as truth without anyone questioning where it came from or asking for evidence. So that was really just the baseline for our paper, and the motivation behind it was we hear this messaging, it's very confident, and it's very consistent and popular amongst various different platforms. But whereas we just wanted to know, is there any evidence to support the claim? So that was the motivation behind it.
That's so interesting to hear that you two are deep in the exercise world, and whatever is, the new hot topic, or not even a hot topic, you would be aware of it. But even people like me, who's on the surface level, who gets coaching advice from other people like David, who is in this world, Zone 2 has had such good PR the last couple of years, and it's come across my algorithm, and I couldn't log on to anything without hearing about Zone 2. So that's so interesting to hear. David, for you specifically, when Zone 2 had all this good PR, were you aware that there wasn't much scientific evidence or research, should I say, to back it up?
Again, the point here I'm going to bring you back to is for general health. Now, the reason for that is because a lot of the work I've done with people has been in a more athletic space or in those contexts. And in that context, there is a reason you would want to stay below an intensity that would be considered above zone 2, right? There are reasons for that. Now, when I work with people on a health front, has this been my messaging? Absolutely not. And Marco and Altini were discussing in private, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing, but we kind of got to a point where we were I'm just not convinced that we need to be prescribing. It seems that the zone 2 and the amount you do is proportional to your training volume more than anything else. So most people seem to be able to tolerate the same rough amount of high intensity training, roughly. No one people tend to tolerate it from a performance standpoint, again, in elite athletes and not seeing decrements in performance, roughly 3 times a week, somewhere between 2.5, 3 times a week with a certain amount of volume. Around that, you kind of have to go easier. So it's an outcome of that, not, hey, you need to do a ton of zone 2. It's an outcome of needing to do a bunch of training because there are other aspects that are not physiologically based, right? So this review looked at things like mitochondria and all these aspects there, but there is a skill component to riding a bike, or there are efficiency aspects, and that's about low intensity training. That's just we need to get you thousands and thousands of reps, and you just can't do that at a high intensity. That's not to say if we could sustain more, we wouldn't. Sorry, Kristi, you go, please.
No, sorry, I interrupted you.
No. You're the guest. I am here. I am here to hear from you. I'm not here to talk.
So yeah, I just wanted to disclaim right from the beginning too, is that we only addressed the claims around mitochondria and fat oxidative capacity. And there might be various other reasons why someone would engage in zone 2 training. Like you said, the skill component that we're not addressing at all. We're just addressing, because our lab specifically studies mitochondrial adaptations, and we were just perplexed by the messaging of, oh, we have to be doing zone 2 and we can't even go up into zone 3 or else we're negating the benefits to our mitochondria and our fat oxidative capacity that we get when we're sticking in right below lactate threshold 1. So that was really the claim, and anything beyond that people will love to like use as, but this is why zone 2 is good, and like against our paper. I can't even respond to that because that's not what we address at all. So just want to throw that out there too.
Yeah. Well, let's get, like, I think there's some important stuff here. Like, let's talk a couple of definitions, because I think it'll help people where people may hear this and hear this paper discussed. So, like, let's start with the intensity domains as they pertain to health. So if you could run through those for us, because this always confuses me.
In exercise physiology, we really talk about exercise intensities based on these intensity domains, and of which there's 3. So there's the moderate intensity, heavy, and then severe. And the way they're demarcated is by, you can use lactate. So lactate threshold 1 is typically used to demarcate moderate intensity to heavy. So zone 2 would be in the upper moderate intensity domain, just below our first lactate threshold, which is just a small bump above our resting lactate levels. Anything above that is within the heavy intensity domain, which in the zone models would typically be like zones 3 and 4. And then as you increase above that and you go beyond our second lactate threshold or critical power or maximal lactate steady state, these things are all kind of equivalent within the literature, and kind of is used because we have a study going on right now in our lab looking at what actual absolute lactate values are individual maximal lactate steady states, and is that actually associated with their critical power. It's a very interesting study. Results are not, it's not done yet, so I can't speak to it, but I'm excited to share that with you guys because I think you'll like it. Anyways, I've been derailed. Above that is in the severe intensity domain. Within the severe intensity domain, you can only really sustain exercise for minutes before you fatigue. In the heavy intensity domain, so now I'm going backwards, we can sustain a good duration of exercise depending on where you're falling within that domain. So if you're in the low bottom half, you can probably go 60, 90 minutes, but above that, before you start like depleting significant amounts of glycogen and reaching fatigue, as soon as we're reaching above that and going close to our critical power, obviously duration goes down as intensity goes up. And then below, so our first lactate threshold, just below that is what we consider zone 2. So that bottom within the moderate intensity, we would have zone 1 and zone 2. And lactate accumulation will be low. We won't be depleting much glycogen. Metabolic stress is very low as well. And there's just a low metabolic cost to sitting in that zone, which I think is part of the reason why athletes do it, is just because there's a low metabolic cost. And why what we talk about in the paper is like, and why it wouldn't essentially make sense to for us to adapt to is because of that low metabolic cost. And I'll stop there and let you chime in.
No, that's a really good breakdown of it. I think in a 3-zone model, 1, 2, 3. In a 5-zone model, zone 2 sits below that first threshold, I think is the take home here. And that's where everyone talks about zone 2 there. But in physiology, we only have 3 zones because there's only 2 breakpoints, right? In lactate or respiratory rate or whatever. I have a hunch that paper is going to show that those things don't line up at all. I've seen some individual N-of-1 data from some athletes, and those things don't look to line up as well as we hope they would in exercise physiology. I think if you're untrained and using a very coarse tool, you can probably see them as the same. And I think if you get to a more granular level and you're more trained, you might see some splits between even lactate and respiratory breaks or changes there. But
yeah, I'll just speak to myself. I was a participant in the study, and my maximal lactate steady state is around 8 millimolars, which I held for 60 minutes. But in the literature, the maximal lactate steady state is supposed to be around 4. So I don't know, maybe I'm exposing myself as being untrained, because I think the more trained you are, the lower your lactate would be at MLSS. But anyways, it's just super interesting.
You're exposing yourself as a CrossFit athlete, yet soon to be runner. No, because if you're training that high intensity, then you train to tolerate the higher levels of lactate and produce more of it versus using more of it and producing less amounts, as we classically see in an endurance trained sort of profile. But I think it makes sense. Your profile makes complete sense there. I think the 2 and 4 as our arbitrary limits are what we do in science, which is we have to create a standardized protocol. So it's like, let's call it 2 and 4 rather than, let's find these breakpoints and use whatever method. You would have seen these methods. You've done the research. I've seen them on a paper and like glanced over them. It's like, how do we derive second lactate turn point when it was, X or Y or whatever it is. So certainly that's the thing. One thing I wanted to ask you is where these moderate, severe and heavy domains, or moderate, heavy and severe domains, they're getting confused again, where they lie with respect to physical activity guidelines when we talk about moderate and vigorous physical activity, because I think this is instructive as well.
Yeah, so the moderate intensity, so in physical activity guidelines, essentially just say 150 minutes of, or 150 to 300 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise. And if you're doing vigorous, you can essentially cut it in half to however much you would do in the moderate intensity. Intensity. And so moderate though is our low. So heavy, I guess, would be the moderate within the physical activity guidelines, somewhere within the two. So, I guess the moderate and the heavy would be moderate as the
So in the physical activity guidelines, basically when they say moderate intensity, they're talking about below second lactate threshold. So whatever that would then be the moderate and heavy domains.
And I don't know if you could even demarcate it like that, because I think they just do it by METs or percent of VO2 max, and they don't all line up perfectly. So it's actually kind of hard.
Probably splits that middle zone, to be honest, and that would make some sense. But anyway, I was just interested in that because of the nomenclature around the naming of it being confusing for people, and I wanted to try and clear that up. But it sounds like it's clear as mud for everybody, including the researchers. So let's leave it at that and not ask you to do any more verbal gymnastics around.
I have a very clear definition.
No, it's not you. It's where we're getting messed up in science, right? When we're talking about performance or health, are we talking about these domains? Are we talking about zones? Are we talking about, intensity as arbitrary for training? So it's not an indication on you. It's an indication on how badly we're doing as a group of scientists, or maybe it's the difference between science and advocacy, right? So as a scientist trying to be specific and the advocates trying to be accessible to people, right?
Right.
We want it, like, at the end of the day, we want more people doing more exercise. Like that's a really helpful thing. But let's talk quickly then about what's claimed about Zone 2, because we sort of buried that lead, and then kind of what the paper suggests is more accurate, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, my takeaway from social media is that Zone 2 is positioned as this intensity that we should be spending around 3 to 4 hours a week in. So because it's the intensity that's associated with this peak fat oxidation. So as we go from rest to exercise, we increase our fat oxidation rates. But as you increase intensity even further, eventually you reach this peak fat oxidation or fat max. And any intensity above that is where fat oxidation might drop. And then we increase carbohydrate oxidation relatively. And so in Zone 2, we should be peaking how much fat we're burning at that intensity. And that the messaging kind of is around like burning the most amount of fat during an exercise bout should elicit these adaptations that promote better fat oxidative capacity, including mitochondria. So mitochondria are the site of fat oxidation, but we also burn carbohydrates using our mitochondria. So it's not like going in higher intensities is now shutting off how much of our mitochondria we're using. We're using more. We need more ATP. It's the idea is that exercising in a zone that has the highest relative fat oxidation rates is just driving these fat oxidation adaptations. And so we should sit in there for a really long time and make our bodies really good fat burners. I think that's my general understanding. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd say it's that, and then maybe like there's a component of claims around more mitochondria produced as a result of that as well, and that's probably
Yeah.
similar to what you're talking, or bundled into what you're talking. I just wanted to be really clear for listeners. It's something I talk about all the time: the difference between absolute and relative here. So your fat oxidation rate or the energetic requirements go up as we increase intensity. What is burned to create that energy changes as a proportion, but the amounts may go up or down, right?
Right.
And that's a huge difference between relative, so we're talking about then percentages, and absolute, which is total amount, right? So you might be burning, we're talking about fat max, that is the most amount of fat you're burning. It will go down after that, but the energetic requirements go up. So you have carbs that are going to be burned in place of that fat, and extra carbs because the intensity's gone up. So I just want to be really clear here. There's a difference between percentages, which is relative, and then absolutes, right? Because again, if people have heard, elite cyclists talk about their zone 2, it'll be some disgusting number of watts. That is still energy they have to put back in, even if it's coming from fat. It's not carbs they have to put back in specifically, but it's energy, right? So 300 watts is 300 watts of work. Where that comes from is about relatives, but the absolutes are absolute there, right? So if your zone 2 is 300 watts, great. If it's 100 watts, great as well. You still have that energetic debt to pay back.
Yeah, but the absolute energy expenditure from an hour at 300 watts is like an unsurmountable compared to like 60 watts or 80 watts, which I find in my recreationally active individuals in the lab, their lactate thresholds will sit around 60 to 80 watts. And an hour of that is very different from an hour at 300 watts. So the absolute intensity is vastly different depending on the population that we're talking about. And if you are very unfit, so someone who perhaps has type 2 diabetes or has metabolic syndrome, they're already in zone 2 just walking around. So to promote zone 2 as this like magical intensity for improving mitochondrial function, increasing mitochondrial biogenesis, increasing fat oxidative capacity, in order to support better metabolic health, that is simply getting up and going for a walk for individuals, which I would never say is bad, but I wouldn't say is optimal.
Kristi, I want to get into how Zone 2 helps us with regards to health. But before we do, can you talk to us about the population that you mentioned you were part of this study, but can you talk to us about the population that was part of this? Because I just want listeners to, I don't know, see if they can relate to them, if they can get a better understanding of what the takeaways are here.
Yeah, so our paper was just a narrative review, so there's no intervention part of it. But we are just addressing the promotion of Zone 2 to the general public. So I place myself in as a member of the general public who just wants to exercise for health.
No,
you're
you're
an
not
athlete.
Most
You're a
people
runner
don't
now.
fall out of bed and run a marathon on a Tuesday. No.
But okay, so for an individual just trying to exercise for health, who's following maybe the physical activity guidelines in terms of 300 minutes, let's say, the messaging is that person should be spending around 80% of their time in zone 2 because we want to get mitochondrial adaptations. We want to increase mitochondrial biogenesis. We want to support our metabolic flexibility through improving our fat oxidative capacity and insulin sensitivity. And zone 2 is promoted as the intensity that we should be spending a lot of time in to get those benefits. So that's the population that this messaging that we are addressing in this paper. But we used studies. It didn't matter what the population was in the studies that we used as evidence to either support or refute the use of zone 2 for these said outcomes. So some of the studies did include athletes, and some of them included sedentary type 2 diabetic individuals. Our takeaway was that the less fit you are, we did find some evidence that zone 2 elicited some benefits, some increases in mitochondrial capacity, increases in fat oxidative capacity. But I think the general overall, the overarching literature would suggest that the fitter you are, the more you may require higher intensities to adapt to your bouts of exercise.
Yeah, and so those things track with physiology, which is to say the biggest benefits you'll ever get are from nothing to something. right? If you
Right.
do absolutely nothing, going for a walk is going to be hugely impactful. Once you're running marathons, walking is probably not going to help, right? Or it will, but it's going to take a lot of walking, right? And it's just like there's some basic logic here around how we adapt and that sort of stuff that I think is been borne out by this paper. That was my takeaway from the aspect of the zone 2 stuff from reading the paper. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. People are sedentary or very unhealthy, then walking's a great start. And then over time, that's going to have to change for them. And for those who are fit already, there's nothing wrong with walking. But if you really want to improve and stimulate your physiology, you're going to have some higher intensity in there, right?
Right. And that comes back to how I was describing the moderate intensity domain, is that there's just there's low metabolic stress associated with exercise performed in the moderate intensity domain. So we wouldn't expect because the way we adapt to exercise is by responding to metabolic stress. And if we're just in a state where there's little metabolic stress, then we wouldn't expect to have adaptation. So if you were designing a study to elicit mitochondrial biogenesis, mitochondrial adaptations, zone 2 would be probably the last choice, which that's just a little fun mind game to play if you're to see like, okay, well, what if we were designing a study, what would you choose? And that doesn't line up with the messaging online.
Or you'd be looking to do days worth, right? Like that's what you'd be looking at, is trying to get days and days and days worth of activity to see if you get anything from zone 2, right? To like push that to the nth degree is like, how do we get any changes in mitochondria? Like, let's get just obscene volumes here and then see if we can see anything.
Right.
But on this, so like, let's talk about then from a health standpoint, if it's not zone 2, is it as simple as like higher intensity is better and we'll see better adaptations to mitochondrial, like let's call it function, as well as I guess volume? Although we're not going to get into like how the stuff's measured, because like my read on that mitochondria stuff is like it's pretty messy. Are we measuring?
I study mitochondria, and I'm even confused by a lot of the literature, so don't feel bad about that. Yeah, so I guess the idea that like why zone 2 is promoted for better metabolic health is just the link between mitochondrial function, mitochondrial content, and fat oxidative capacity and metabolic health outcomes. So those who are insulin resistant, who we would consider not metabolically healthy, they do have poor metabolic flexibility. They have poor fat oxidative capacity, and they have low mitochondrial content. So we want to have those who are healthy and insulin sensitive typically have good fat oxidative capacity and high mitochondrial content. So that's where the links come from. So then we would want to exercise in a way that promotes those things. But when it comes to wait, what was your question?
So I guess that's helpful, and I'll use an interjection here. So when we talk about metabolic flexibility, we talk about your ability to transition between using different fuels. So can you use fat for energy? Can you use carbohydrate for energy? And the goal is to be able to use both, right? You want to be a hybrid car, not stuck on gas or electric. It's kind of the thinking. So the question was really about like, is it as simple as higher intensity is better for these metrics of mitochondrial improvement? Is it just do as much higher intensity stuff as you can handle to improve your mitochondrial capacity and function?
Yeah, I would say like at the end of the day, it's exercise with intensity at the highest volume that you can recover from. I think it's as simple as that. That's where you're gonna drive the most amount of mitochondrial adaptations. This is supported by systematic reviews. So we have plenty of recent systematic reviews suggesting that volume at intensity drives adaptations for mitochondrial content and function. So you said at the beginning that you think that there's a pretty baseline, like what people can I guess handle at high intensities. I don't know what that threshold is. I don't know if it's different per person of you can do high intensity every day. And when I say high intensity, I actually just mean anything above zone 2. So anything zone 3 plus, it's like accumulate however much volume you can there. And that includes continuous exercise. So I think one of the confusions, part of this paper that's been confused online, is that we are basically just promoting HIIT or high intensity interval training or sprint interval training, when that's not what we're saying at all. And continuous exercise within the heavy intensity domain a lot of the time can result in similar mitochondrial adaptations to HIIT or sit, but it is continuous exercise and it's above zone 2. So
Yeah.
that still counts. And I'm not against continuous exercise by any means, but I think it's really important that all continuous exercise you can't consider that zone 2. Zone 2 is very specific to below lactate threshold. So when it comes to promoting mitochondrial adaptations, the literature would suggest that you would just want to accumulate volume above zone 2, and HIIT is a great way to do that. It's very time efficient. You don't have to spend much time doing high intensity interval training, but you can get the same benefits from spending time in moderate intensity continuous training, MICT, or just within the heavy intensity domain, doing 30 to 60 minute continuous exercise bouts. There is some literature that would favor high intensity interval training because you can get to an absolute intensity that's just way above what you could in the heavy intensity domain. It just requires you to do it in intervals because you can only sustain it for minutes.
Yeah. I mean, my read on this is it's like a lot of it's about, if you're thinking about it conceptually, a lot of it's about creating metabolic disruption and or burning a bunch of energy. If you think about those two things as your goals from a health standpoint, you're probably going to be fine. You're going to build workouts and training and exercise. It's going to be helpful in that respect.
Because you actually do burn you deplete glycogen in zone 2, which I was surprised by. That was one thing I was like, oh, you burn glycogen when you're in zone 2. But you have to do it for long durations, like 2 to 3 hours. And there are studies that show no signaling activation even after hours of zone 2. So there is, I will say though, we did find evidence that zone 2 can acutely upregulate signaling pathways involved with mitochondrial biogenesis, but there's also evidence that show no upregulation of these pathways. And so it's inconsistent. But it's not inconsistent as soon as you go into higher intensities. Like, it's very consistent that you will get an activation of these responses.
It's probably also a stronger activation. It's upregulated higher. So just to be clear for listeners and potentially for you as well, around my statement around the sort of 3 days a week maintenance of that high intensity, that is for athletes if they are to maintain the quality and outputs of that. If you want to train heavy every day and you don't have a performance goal, go for it. People can do that. And what you'll find is you naturally fluctuate. There's going to be a day where you're dragging and your output will be down, and that's okay. And there's going to be days where you're smashing it and you'll be better off. Athletes can't afford that. Athletes have to be at a certain, they have output goals that they need to hit. And so that's why they tend to polarize days, all those sort of things. So again, the key here for people, athletes can do, athletes are not general population. Health and athletics, not always aligned. Really important
100%.
points.
Yeah, and 20%. So if we're talking about polarized training, 80% low intensity, 20% high intensity, 20% of a 20-hour training volume per week is still a ton of high intensity exercise. So that is probably the equivalent of what someone in the general public, or probably more than what someone in the general public would do, even if they were training every single day. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some of the Norwegian boys go for it, and it's like, that's a lot of energy. That's more than most people burn in a week. So it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So for health purposes, I would say move your body consistently as frequently as you can and with intensity. And like you said, you'll naturally have easier days just because you can't go balls to the wall every day. But I don't think you have to purposely program low intensity work if you're just interested in health outcomes.
Yeah, that's an awesome takeaway.
I was going to ask you for a summary, mostly for an elevator pitch, mostly for social media purposes that we can clip up, but you just did it there perfectly. You preempted me. But I did have a second question, which was going to be my last, which is that piano behind you there. Is that yours? It looks impressive. And do you play?
I was very fortunate to inherit this. I try to play. I don't have time right now, but I just teach myself songs through YouTube. But I'm not bad, but I should play more.
Can we wrap up this interview by doing something I think we've never done before? Can you go over there for 15 seconds? Just 15 seconds or something.
There's no way. I'm putting my foot down on that one.
I love that.
Okay.
I'll send you a personal clip, Xylon.
There's nothing personal. Don't send it to him. He'll put that on social. I promise you. I know him. Don't do it. Do not do it.
That's
That's
hilarious.
great. Oh.
Thank you so much, Kristi. This has been great. We've loved having you. You are welcome anytime you publish anything or want to talk about something. You are welcome back. You have an open invite. You're obviously part of the community already, so we love having you as part of the community. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. This is so much fun. It's always nice to connect with you guys. And yeah, till next time. Thank you.
David, thanks so much for getting Kristi on here. Such a pity I couldn't get her to play that piano.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but maybe one day, maybe next time she comes on, maybe when she guest hosts, she can play the piano for us.
Yeah. She would love to guest host. And Kristi, I'm telling you now, that's your audition into it. There's only way you're going to get on to guest host here is by sending us a little bit of a snippet of you playing. Should we get out of here?
Let's do it. It's been a long episode. We appreciate everybody listening, and please do subscribe to the podcast if you haven't, particularly if you made it this far. Definitely subscribe. Share this podcast. I'm sure there are bits of it that people are interested in, so definitely go share that and rate the podcast if you haven't yet. We do really appreciate that. It makes a huge difference to us. So thank you for your time today, mate. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you as well. We drop a new episode every single Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in.